Good afternoon, everyone. It's 12 o'clock. It's the Friday before Thanksgiving week. The Patterson Foundation would like to welcome you to today's Webversation. We're very excited to have everyone here as folks are starting to come in to the Webversation. Please make sure that you're renaming yourself on screen with your name, your organization, so that we can know who you are when we get to the latter part of this session, and we can you can participate in the Q&A. I'm Sherry Corrier, and the Patterson Foundation always starts any session of the day with a question of the day. And so also we'd like you to put in the chat this morning what you're thankful for. With Thanksgiving coming up shortly around the corner, we know there is a lot to be thankful for. So if you would put that in the chat whenever you think about what that might be, that would also be very helpful. Today we're here to talk to you about Pathways Forward, Learnings and Takeaways in Digital Access. This is our Phase 2 National Philanthropy Scan Report. And when we move to the next slide, we just want to mention to you to kind of reiterate who's involved in this. So the Patterson Foundation started this phase of the National Philanthropy Scan actually in October of 2022. Leading up to it, there was quite a bit of interviews, and we had an opportunity to put together a series of workshops. Along with us, our partner in this was the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, and that's at the national level. Next slide, we just want to talk to you a little bit about what our goals are for today. We're going to be sharing the report. We're going to be increasing your connective tissue. We're going to spark reflection about the report since you've all received it and hopefully had a chance to look through it and read it, and then encourage at the end a deeper reflection through the sharing in our conversation elements. As I look through the participants that are here, I want to make sure and recognize that we have a new fellow. We also have a fellow who was part of this original scan, both phase 1 and 2, Michael Zimmerman. And as Michael Zimmerman joins us, we just want to say thanks to Michael, who's moved on to the Farish Foundation. And we're happy to have him as part of today's group. Our next slide will allow me to kind of go back for you and to reflect upon what today's agenda is. We're framing the report. We're going to report reflections. During a breakout session, we'll have a great panel, and we'll close out with some further thoughts. To begin, we just want to remind everyone in the next slide that as we work through these 8 workshops, we transferred from our fellow Michael Zimmerman to a new fellow, and I want to introduce to you today Andrew Spector. Andrew, you will see him here shortly. He will be taking over facilitating the panel as well as helping with the response backs on the breakout. He's a member of our DA4A team now. He's leading this phase 2 and phase 3 National Philanthropy Scan, a former 6th grade teacher, and also the co-founder of Tulsa Changemakers. So we're going to be happy to bring Andrew on shortly. In this next slide, I'm quickly doing a reminder for you of the reason we're here. 8 funder workshops, 25 different presenters over the last 12 to 15 months. 122 different funders from across the country joined us. 340 different people attended those sessions across the 8 workshops and representing 32 states. So we feel like you should know that this information is inclusive across many, many ecosystems in digital access across the country, focusing on the 3 essential elements: connectivity, devices, and skills training and support. As we go to the next slide, we move from those 3 essential elements to the different workshops that we were a part of during this last 8 months. So workshop number 1 discovering pathways for astonishing success in connectivity. We had 4 fantastic presenters, and we're reminding you of those so that as you go to the breakout rooms, you'll have an opportunity to remember different concepts that you may have learned in those sessions or as you read the report. Our second workshop in the next slide was also a very important one. And we also had 4 fantastic presenters, as you can see on the screen here. And that one was entitled Multi-Sector Collaborations in Digital Access. And no one said it was going to be easy. And for sure, we know that's true. It's not easy. But that workshop showed us just exactly how you could work together with a great example of collaboration. In our next slide, workshop 3 was presented. And in that presentation, we talked about digital access and how it's scaling and the work domestically and internationally, both with corporate and with nonprofit partners and devices. We had 3 great representatives during that session, and you will also have found a lot of value in how corporate works along with nonprofit in the digital access space. In our next slide, workshop 4. Workshop 4 was important in the aspect that we were able to pull in about a specific topic, which was telehealth. Telehealth, having access to the different digital access devices, and 3 fantastic presenters, one from NAMI, USA, and then Louisiana has a great Connect LA program through their broadband, and we were able to talk with their healthcare Blue Cross Blue Shield professional from the foundation there as well. That led us to workshop number 5. And in workshop number 5, in the next slide, we looked at digital access and data. And this was a very exciting one because it talked about access points. We talked about how funders are bridging that digital divide, using data and driving strategy. Later in the program, you're going to see Kate again. And thank you for being here, Kate, who will be one of our panelists. This showed how the Essex Foundation, along with Tech Goes Home and Tufts University, put together a program for access across the state. In our workshop number 6 was also a great workshop, really breaking down barriers and especially focused on education and how effective the community could come together. And for that workshop, we were able to bring together the Mickelson Foundation out of California, the Miami Foundation right here in the state of Florida, and their partner Comcast, and how they were working within the education system to bring all of students on board to make an effective ecosystem in digital access. In workshop number 7 in that next slide was important because it was more of a focus on the human aspect of digital access and how funders are closing that gap, especially in digital literacy. We had an opportunity to hear from the Humana Foundation on how they're working closely with that. And then also a great example of the older adults technology use from Tom Camber. And especially, as we all know, that's a very difficult area for people in the senior groups to stay involved, to learn new literacy. And then as we closed out our workshop series in workshop number 8, we were able to circle back to what it really means to drive system change. And to do that, we brought in the Federal Communications Organization, our close contact there, Kayla Henderson Eola, and then also Archstone Foundation, who specifically was working in driving system change in the California area. And then right here in Tampa Bay, the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay. So all these workshop series together drove the response for this phase 2 report that we're going to be talking about today. And as we move on to that, I just want to highlight in the next slide to get you ready for those conversations, the takeaways. And so the takeaways identified in the report as a reminder was how space is so important for learning and sharing and connecting, more important than ever. But now we have a new space, not just a physical space, but a digital space, a virtual space. Also, how important it is to work together collaboratively through multiple organizations, all different sectors across all areas. We can't do it alone, and the success of digital access lies in being able to collaborate. And then our systems level changes and approaches can't just be short term, they have to be long term. This is all here to stay. Virtual work is all here to stay, and we still have over 20 million people across the country who are not digitally connected. And then, of course, it's important that we know what the data is telling us. How is it driving the strategies that we're working on? And how can we continually improve to make that data as important to growing the digital access, but lessening the digital divide? And then our fifth takeaway throughout the series of 8 workshops was how all of this intersects with other key issues, other things that people are having problem with. And a great example of that was our telehealth workshop, and how people in the healthcare area could still have access if their digital technology was working. So those are the key takeaways. And we just wanted to remind you all of that as you're reading the report and you're looking through those things. I'd like to now start to move this over to Andrew Spector and introduce Andrew physically so that he can go through our next effort. Andrew, take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sherry. I'm very impressed that you're able to say all that in a matter of like 11 minutes. So well done. It's great to meet you all. I just joined the Patterson Foundation about like 2.5 months ago, and I've been super inspired by all the work that's already happened and continues to happen related to digital access. And so I know, Sherry, when you shouted out Michael, he wasn't yet on the Zoom, but he is here now. But special shout out to Michael Zimmerman now with the Farish Foundation, who really paved the way for a lot of the work that we're doing around digital access, both locally and around the country. So thank you, Michael, for making that possible, and you really set us up well. So when we were putting together this Webversation to share about the report, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't us just talking to you, but also giving everybody an opportunity to connect with each other and share learnings and what you're doing. So in just a moment, we're going to split into breakouts, and we're going to discuss these 5 questions. So one is just, when you get into your breakouts, please introduce yourselves, talk about what your organization currently does very briefly. And then if you're not currently doing digital access work, talk about maybe what you would like to explore doing. The meat of these breakouts, I think, is around question 3, is just, we want to create a space around processing and reflecting on the report. So please spend some time thinking about what the report makes you think about. And then when you finish that, move into question 4, and you can share your cookies, which in TPF world, sharing cookies means that every person is kind of like a cookie jar, and you have cookies in you, which are your knowledge and your expertise. And when you open up your cookie jar, you can share that, and that inspires other people to share as well. So we ask you to open up the cookie jars of your organization and talk about what you're most proud of that you're doing in the digital access world, so that the other organizations can learn about that and then share their cookies back with you. And we'll be in these breakouts for about 10 minutes. So make sure you leave about 30 seconds to a minute at the end to make sure that you identify one person in your group that's going to share some of the highlights from your conversation, so that the rest of the group can hear what happened in the other breakouts. So Alexa just put all those questions in the chat. So those should still be in your chat once we get into the breakout rooms. Kira is going to split us up into groups of 6 to 8 right now, and we'll see everybody back here for a whole group share in about 10 minutes. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I hope those conversations were productive and helpful. Before we share out whole group what was discussed, we always take a picture at TPF events. So if you're currently off camera and you're willing to come on camera, at least briefly, please do that. And then smile for the camera because Kira is going to take a picture.
Okay, in 3, 2, 1, smile. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. I hope the conversations were great, and that you identified one person from each group to share out. So there should be 4 speakers. So I think you can just, we don't have names for the groups. So whoever wants to go first can just share out some highlights, maybe specifically some reflections, key reflections that came up, or some really exciting cookies that were shared around great things happening in other organizations. Who can share first? Avery?
Philip agreed to share out from our group. So Philip, if you would like to share, that would be great.
Yep, happy to do so. Generally speaking, I guess our group indicated that most of us were at early stages of development of digital access and digital literacy, and so we and people are trying to work with other groups. In my case, I probably over talked about what we're doing, which is an initiative that's been about 3 years in the making. That's now in test in Columbus, Ohio, which is a species of digital media use for community organizations and museums and the like. And the idea is that in between visits to the museum or the United Way activities or whatever, that you can reach out and be in contact with people from the group. And it's particularly important for out of school time learning, and has because it can involve parents and caregivers. It can have a 2 and 3 gen application. But basically the idea is to have moderators from the organizations that are involved in the children's participation, or even adults in other cases, and that there's all kinds of protections built in so that it's safe. But the idea is to that in between meetings of the kids' STEM club or the attendances at the museum or the United Way, you're able to connect with people from there, maintain the relationship, make sure that kids complete the programs, STEM programs, and so on. And so that there's a continuing. And I spoke this annoyingly about what I call reintermediation, which is putting people in between you, the user, and the machine. And so that's one thing that you can do by qualified moderators.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Philip. Really appreciate that. Can somebody else share from another group?
I was in group 4 and we had a great conversation. We opted for me to get some more screen time. So I'll be sharing out for us. We had a great conversation, all of us working in this space, but at different phases and different parts of the country. But there was a large theme around that of collaboration. And there also was a focus on digital equity.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. All right. Share number 3.
I'll jump in. And we had a food fight on who was going to talk because no one wanted to, so I lost. So excuse the food. I think there's a lot of similarities when you talk fast because there's only 10 minutes and there are quite a few people in our group. We had a couple of people from the libraries. I represent Delaware Libraries, and also AmeriCorps Vistas, working in the space of helping out with affordable connectivity programs and digital literacy and all that navigation piece of it. Talked about a couple of groups are talking about lending out Chromebooks, and lending out devices. We did Chromebooks. You always think about you, right? as well as parking lots. So some people have talked about parking lots, why find parking lots. Kate is going to be speaking later, so I'm not going to steal her thunder since I didn't take very good notes. But what really jumped out is the philanthropy that she's doing, if I could say those words, of the collaboration and how they are actually Wi-Fi several different communities. So it'll be amazing. So I can't wait to hear more about that because we all are jealous. The other thing I would say is that in talking about device lending is whether or not that's a practical way to go and what other type of things might we do into this, speaking about equity and all that good stuff. So that's our group. It was lovely, and I wish we had more time.
Awesome. Thank you, Alta. And this doesn't have to be the end. That's part of the goal of this, creating this space, is connecting organizations with each other in this work. And so we don't need to have all the conversations today, but we can connect with each other afterwards to figure out how we can share and support. Number 4.
We were number 4. I think we already went.
How about 4th? Whatever group has not been represented yet. Could somebody share from that group?
Hi, Andrew. It's Maribel. I was representing Group 5. We barely got underway. By the time we introduced ourselves and kind of got a sense of where we were with digital access work, there was definitely not enough time to get into the meat of this conversation. However, as we were introducing ourselves, I did make a note and understand that a lot of the folks that were in my group in particular were really just getting started with digital access work. So, for example, we had Antonio Westmoreland from Methodist Healthcare Ministries talk about how they're issuing a brand new RFP. So very early stages, it sounds like, for Antonio, and I can invite Antonio to say a little bit more about that. And then also got a chance to meet Jamie Robbins, who's now with the Kane County Housing Authority. And they also have needs around, it sounds like, all 3 legs of the stool: connectivity, devices, and training. So while we didn't get a chance to really dive into a deep conversation, I did get a sense that these are folks who have a strong interest in digital access, and that they also represent different sectors, not just the philanthropic sector.
Awesome. Thank you. And that's good feedback too around the space we might need to have these conversations and do deep dives. But hopefully the upcoming Q&A that we're about to do can be helpful in kind of highlighting some work that's already being done. And we'll talk for about 15 minutes or so in the panel. And then we'll have some time for question and answer too. So we'll have some more discussion here in the second half of this Webversation. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our 3 panelists. And as I do that, Kira is going to spotlight them so you can see the 4 of us together. I'll be moderating this panel, meaning just really asking the questions. Kate Mache is with the Essex County Community Foundation, and she's the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Government Relations. Kathy Lee is with United Way of Metropolitan Dallas as the Director of Education and Career Success. And then Beatrice Farrell is with the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay as the Director of the Digital Inclusion Project. So thank you to the 3 of you for your willingness to engage in this panel and share your expertise and what you've been working on. So the first question that I have for the 3 of you, and I want all 3 of you to answer, is just to briefly introduce yourself and share a brief overview. I'm sure you could talk for hours about the digital access work you do, but a brief overview of the kind of digital access work your organization does. We'll start with Kate, and then we'll go to Kathy, and then to Beatrice.
Great, thanks for having me. So I'm Kate Mache with the Essex County Community Foundation. We're the 34 cities and towns, represent the 34 cities and towns north of Boston. We do not have county government, so we are we're a philanthropic organization as a community foundation, and the only one that has the similar footprint. We represent about 1 million people and 4,000 nonprofits. So what we've done is we really believe in systems philanthropy, which is the idea of making sure that our investments from a philanthropic level are also leveraged and partnered with other agencies, so government agencies, state agencies, and partners. We created a coalition of about 275 people that are really passionate about this, and organizations, nonprofits, community-driven processes. So we're invested in literacy, access, equipment, coalition building, of course. And one thing that we've done is we've stood up free residential Wi-Fi, and the first one in Massachusetts in the Point neighborhood in Salem, and looking to do another one in another agency. So we do lots of different things, which I won't talk about, but I'll pop something in the chat if folks want to take a look at it.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate. Really appreciate that. Kathy?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy. I'm with the United Way Metropolitan Dallas. We are a social change organization working to address areas of education, income, and health in communities, specifically in North Texas. We work in 4 different counties. We do a lot of grant making, and that's sort of the work that we're doing in this digital access work, working with community partners and leveraging also partnerships with corporations like AT&T to be able to do everything from device access distributions to digital skills classes, as well as supporting with ACP enrollment. And so that's sort of the work that we're doing, and look forward to learning from you all today.
Thank you, Kathy. Beatrice? Oh, you're muted, Beatrice.
That would help. My name is Beatrice Farrell. I am representing the Community Foundation Tampa Bay. We operate in 5 counties. Our digital work is just in Pinellas County initially. That's where we're starting. Our initiative came to the foundation as a working group. So the digital inclusion work was being done, and then it was absorbed by the Community Foundation. So future plans are to expand to the other 4 counties that we operate in. We operate as a collective impact model. And so in our network, we have approximately 50 organizations, and they represent universities, government, both state and county level, nonprofits, large nonprofits, community-based nonprofits, and several businesses that are adjacent in the internet access space. And so what we've been able to do since coming to the foundation formally is solidify the network. And we've been able to do a couple of projects here. We have one of our partners is a computer recycling team, and that is our way of distributing devices into the community. So some people have mentioned doing grants for them. Right now, the way we're able to do it is through the partnership we have with a computer recycling firm. We also are having interactions with community groups to talk about the Affordable Connectivity Program, and we've just started a digital training that will impact the partners in our network. The way that we structured our program, especially for device participation, is the referrals come from one of the organizations in the network, and right now that's the way that your individuals are able to get devices through the partner network. We have Spectrum is our internet service provider, and we in the next week we'll have outdoor Wi-Fi at one of our neighborhood parks, and that was a request from a neighborhood association that said we want this in our neighborhood. So we're able to be responsive to initially the people in the network, as we're hoping to scale this up throughout the county and then to our 4 surrounding counties.
Awesome. Thank you, Beatrice. So I'm going to keep it with you for this next question, and then we'll go back in reverse order to Kathy and then to Kate. But in part, we created the report, right, because we wanted to detail and share what we learned from those workshops over those months, and really highlight some of the great work that's happening, some of the promising practices that are emerging. And also we wanted to encourage people to be really reflective and think about how what they learn from other organizations can influence their strategy, and think about their strategy evolving over time. So for the 3 of you, starting again with Beatrice, then up to Kathy, and then Kate, and I'm saying up because that's how it looks on my screen. How has your organization adjusted its strategy in response to the workshops from the last year, or just how has it evolved over the past year?
I mentioned in my presentation that we were a work group before our digital inclusion project came to the foundation. And so I was the co-leader of that work group, and I was coming to the workshops before I actually became a full-time employee running this program. And the workshops helped inform some of the things that we did and do. It also provided a lot of information and things that we need to think about. One in particular that jumps out is about device distribution. And what happens, because typically when you give out devices, we're using recycled devices, the lifetime of them is maybe 3 years, and build something in place so you can respond to the individuals that you've given devices to, knowing that their shelf life is maybe 2 or 3 years. And so it's talking about sustainability or thinking about sustainability as we're distributing the devices. So I will, to all the people who are on now, they're saying that they're new, if you have an opportunity to like listen to those, if they're available, listen to those. I think it would be a good investment of 8 hours of your time just to hear the work that people are already doing that can help you give you ideas that you're not yet considered. So that's how I would say it helped inform what we're doing now.
Awesome. Thank you. Kathy?
I know the workshops were really helpful in the sense that it was affirming a lot of some of the work that we were doing. I think we kind of came into this space around the heels of the pandemic with virtual learning being a huge conversation. And I think, if anything, the focus on not only focusing on access and connectivity, but also focusing on advocacy and public policy, I think was a good reminder. We've been inviting representatives to come out to our device distributions, and it doesn't take much to convince them why this is so important to our community when you see long lines, right, even before the distribution begins. And so having them kind of meet with families firsthand, hear their stories has been really important for us in the work that we do. And I think something else that was, really emphasized was about the multi-sector collaboration and funder collabs. And I know since then we've been also being not only getting like the initial investment from AT&T to kind of begin this work, we've also partnered with three other foundations who've also added to the investment so that we can continue this work moving forward. And so I think that's continuing the strategy that was shared is something that we'll continue to embrace and we'll continue to implement.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. Kate?
A lot similar to Kathy, so I'll bring 3 new things to it. One was we pivoted from, or we're in the process of pivoting from that acute need that we all had during the pandemic, which was, okay, well, let's stand up these access networks. Let's find a device solution, right? To now we're looking at cross-sector collaboration in everything we're doing, and it's doing all 3 things at once. We also, number 2 is fiscal and programmatic sustainability, big time, right? So that's not just that philanthropy is continuing to fill that divide, right? And to make sure it's not following on our nonprofits moving forward. We do pilots, we look to scale, and then we find the funder. So whether it's the state or the federal side of things, we're working with them for sustainability. And we work within an infrastructure also on a statewide Massachusetts Digital Equity Working Group, so that we can share across the border. For device scaling, for example, we've helped incubate a nonprofit that does device distribution and scalability. So someone, I think Amani might have just popped this in the chat here. So we have now partnered with our businesses within the county to be donating, as well as municipalities to be donating their laptops to create a natural ecosystem that continue to grow with the growth of the program. And then finally, everything has to be collaborative. So our recent summer round of grants, that philanthropy-driven grants, we're all collaborative with at least 5 partners at the table, and sometimes up to 15 to 20 partners.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to veer off a little bit from some of my planned questions based on some things that I'm hearing. One of which is that was stressed in the report, and then also I'm hearing come out of your responses here, is the value, maybe the imperative of cross-sector and multi-organization collaboration. And so we heard before that there's a number of people on this call that their efforts around digital access are pretty new. So to any of you, could you talk a little bit about what it takes to initiate those conversations across sectors and across organizations, and how to set those up in a way that are successful, and maybe some lessons learned along the way? Maybe when you first started trying to do cross-sector multi-organization work, it was maybe you had some challenges, and maybe advice you would give for somebody who's just starting out, and how to do that successfully. So any of y'all can take this. Oh, Beatrice, unmute, please.
When we actually started, we pulled together talking work group space. right before COVID, we pulled together about 30 people, 30 organizations, about 25 people representing about 30 or about 25 people, 30 people representing about 25 organizations, because we wanted to bring Tech Coast home to St. Petersburg. A month later, it was COVID. And so we had already pulled people together around a project, and they were all doing something in that space. And we sort of grew out of, initially, we don't want to say chaos, but we were in panic mode because COVID had just started. So I would encourage anybody who's just getting into the space is to reach out to, have a group meeting with everybody who is already doing something in the space. The service providers, the school system, nonprofits, businesses, nonprofits that are providing services, because digital literacy is one of those services, especially nonprofits that service our most vulnerable clientele. Digital literacy is incredibly important in that particular space, because that's one way to move people sort of in a fast trajectory from to change their circumstances, is becoming digitally literate, because now they can take classes online, they can do telehealth. So I would encourage one to pull together people who you think may be in that space, and then start having conversations and look at the examples that are already out there, so you don't have to recreate the wheel.
Awesome. Thank you, Beatrice. Kate or Kathy, do you want to add on to that?
I second not recreating the wheel. I would encourage all of you to look at your state's plans. Lots of federal funding will be influxed in here, and federal funding doesn't always tend to solve the issue in itself, but it tends to be a good leverage point for philanthropy to put in small dollar amounts to also help your nonprofits get to a certain space. So many of your states, we had to make plans in order to receive those funds, and every state got funds or is getting funds. So there might already be coalitions forming that you can tap into, that you can talk to, and you can find on the list who in your area that you could reach out to. And I also encourage you to reach out to other organizations like yourselves. For example, in the community foundation field, we spoke nationally with a lot of our other community foundations across the country, and everyone's always willing to help us. So I would just consider reaching out to folks.
Thank you, Kate.
I don't have much to add. If anything, I would say elevate the voices of the community members. I know we first started this work by doing a survey of all our nonprofit partners and all the families that they serve, to just see, because digital needs are different across communities, and so being able to specifically elevate those stories and be able to portray that, whether that's to a councilman or to a corporate partner, I think that's really, really important.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can I have one more thing, Andrew?
Please.
Don't be afraid to start small, right? Like, you have to start somewhere. It's a really big topic, can be overwhelming. So small pilots actually were a great way to scale and to see what works and what doesn't work for small dollar amounts.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so my next question, and I think we'll ask this question and then we'll move on to question and answer. And again, anybody can answer this question. Not all three of you have to, but all three of you can. What's on the horizon in your community or in the world that you predict will influence your strategy moving forward? So maybe new environmental factors or new things that are coming up that you think will influence your strategy.
I can start. We talked about this at the beginning. The telehealth and a digital world is here to stay, and it will only grow. So in order to make sure those inequities that we're seeing in our neighborhoods don't continue to grow, right? To make sure that we're planning for that sustainability now and scaling for it, and also scaling for the potential for larger funding pots to be able to help supplement that expansion.
I think the expansion of the Affordable Connectivity Program is an opportunity to get more people engaged in digital literacy. I think there was some hesitation, like, do we go on this really hard because the money's going to dry up quickly? And then the money went quicker than the initial estimate. And so, especially those of us who work in social services or adjacent to, you don't want to tell people there's a program and say, oh, sorry, gosh, it ended last month. So the fact that that money has, there's been a big push to get that funding out there, I think is going to be, that really informs the policy. Now you don't sort of have to tell everybody. You can, I mean, now you can tell everybody instead of just telling everybody.
Very similar to what Beatrice said about the funding, the federal funding. And I think because of that, I think the digital literacy skills piece and upskilling is huge in this. Being able to not only get devices to communities, but figure out how can we use these as tools to be able to help further the pathways for members in our community. And so I think that'll be really, really important.
Awesome. Go ahead, Kate.
I also don't think that there is going to be another time where we're going to see this type of investment. Like this is a breaking point in history on changing it. And Maribel wrote in the chat there, the environmental benefit is also really huge, right? So combining those things together. Sorry, Andrew.
No worries. Thank you. Great. Well, we have about 4 to 5 minutes for question and answer. So that probably means 1, maybe 2 questions. So we'll just take the first one. If somebody wants to come off audio or put it in the chat, we'd love to have something from the rest of you all.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
What does the Biden administration have already in legislation or pending legislation that will help boost this effort?
I don't know. Do you all know?
Well, I know that I don't know if it's passed yet, but it's been proposed to expand, to put more funding, but I don't know the outcome of that legislation. At least people are talking about it. I would encourage you to follow National Telecommunications and Information Agency, NTIA. They are one of the agencies, the federal agencies that are responsible for getting that information out.
And I can just say, like, regardless of what's on, I'm not familiar with any kind of pending legislation, but what exists right now is the infrastructure. What we've been talking about here is the infrastructure release funds that will be spent in various different ways, but some of it is specifically for digital equity. That's targeted per state. So that's something that already exists and what states are preparing for or have already received. So it's something that exists. But I will just point out, because some of us are funders here and some of us are thinking about sustainability in future, right? And all of us need that federal funding will not last forever. So you need to plan for that sustainability to continue further down the road.
Awesome. Thank you. And the one thing I'll add to that is that, that ACP is an opportunity to build relationships with people, organizations, and communities. And so even if ACP dries up at some point, those relationships are things that can last, and you can leverage those to help catalyze more digital access in the future. We have time for another question. Anna put in the chat, what it embraces when you said telehealth, device support, medical insurance, peers to members connectivity. Could one or more of you just talk a little bit more about when we talk about the intersections between digital access and telehealth? What does that entail, or what could that entail?
I think it's an opportunity to make sure that you talk about how important it is for underserved communities to have access to internet at home, devices, and the skills to use them. That is a benefit. Telehealth usage is a benefit of having an internet at home, a device, and the skills to use it. And so it allows you to talk about what you're doing and put it in a different context. If your community is digitally literate, you can expand the amount of telehealth services in your community. And that's a way to talk to health providers. Like, hey, you want to increase your telehealth? Are you ensuring that you have these in your community?
Also, telehealth used to be the original word of it, right? Was on the telephone, and now it's switching over to, for reimbursement, to video-based things. So what we've done in Essex County is look towards our community health partners on the ground serving our most vulnerable to say, how can we ensure that everyone has equal access to services as Medicaid and Medicare and reimbursements models make sure that you have video connection, because you don't want to let people get further left behind. So we created a digital navigator system to get each person. And by the way, during COVID, when it was just telehealth on the phone, we had 98% compliance in our health centers with their follow-ups. So can you imagine if we can get them all online to do the video follow-up, the amount of care and economic health and mobility that would provide.
Thank you. Kathy, anything you want to say as a last word before I end this?
No, I was just going to say, Kate, that's really great. I know something we're kind of doing like a reverse type of a situation at United Way. We have healthcare navigators. So now we're looking at equipping them with devices because they do have so much touch points with members in the community that they also have insight into their digital needs as well. And so something that we're exploring. So great to hear that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kate, Kathy, Beatrice. Really appreciate both the work that you're doing and you engaging in this short panel today. I know that I learned a lot, and I'm assuming other people on the call did too. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time. Kira is going to go ahead and de-spotlight us, and I'm going to turn it back over to Sherry, who's going to close us out.
Thank you, Andrew. Wow, great conversation and in a condensed amount of time, and really appreciate everyone's participation. Continue to put things in the chat. We'll be looking through the chat to make sure we go back and find really important tidbits of sharing. I see lots of resources being shared, and again, mentioning for everybody to get on board with what the NTIA is reporting and through the BEAD program, and each state is different. So remember that you're looking for your state and the status of your state. And as Kate mentioned, there's a time frame on all of this. So that's part of what the Patterson Foundation's goal in doing the National Philanthropy Scan and continuing these conversations is to keep the concept going so that these funds can be used across all of the communities. Now, as also with that great response in the telehealth, we'd love to hear your feedback on a survey of today's Webversation. We condensed it down to an hour this time because we know your time is valuable. Here's a link for a QR code for you to fill that out, but also let you tell us what you're doing, what you'd like to do, and anything else that you think we could have covered today. So please take an opportunity to fill this out. You'll also see this in the chat. You'll also see it when Andrew sends out the follow-up with the PowerPoint and the survey and providing any of the resources that are going to be in that. So we want to get your feedback. So we'd love to hear from you. You may end up seeing this request several times. So please feel free to send that back in. We are continuing the conversation, and the Patterson Foundation's main goal is to strengthen people, organizations, and communities. And through the digital access for all work that's been going on in these past 3 years since it began in June of 2020, the National Philanthropy Scan has given us the opportunity to have some great conversation with all of you who are in this space across the country to make sure that it continues to grow. So please do that. Also, if you've thought of something else you're thankful for, please feel free to share that in the chat as well. We want to wish you a very, very great Thanksgiving. If you recognize that holiday, we hope you're with family and friends and that you're all healthy. And remember, take a little bit of time for yourself. You're also very busy. This is how you follow on with the Patterson Foundation, especially our Digital Access for All initiative. These are all the ways that you can stay in contact with us. We'd love for you to end up seeing the blog that Andrew will write after this session. And all of you, we encourage you, if you want to write a blog as well, we'd be happy to publish that in our monthly Digital Access for All newsletter. So from all of us here at the Patterson Foundation, thank you for joining us today, and have a great holiday next week. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.